Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLernan, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion. You can comment on the live stream, and we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, I'm here today with a gentleman from across the pond, that is on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, probably 7 hours flight away, somewhere in the UK. And Matt here has an interesting background because he is a fitness professional, but that wasn't how he started out. I didn't know this until he shared this with me, but he says he spent his youth in a smoky snooker and in billiard halls. Snooker, there we go.
Billiard halls, I guess, in the US, yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, you were actually pretty good at it. 7-time billiard champion and a world championship quarter-finalist. And so you're actually pretty darn good at this thing.
I spent quite a bit of time on the table.
Yeah. Well, before we kick things off, one of the things I'd like to do with my guests is ask them a random question. So I have a deck here of 150 journaling prompts. So they should be pretty good questions here. So if you want to choose a number between 1 and 6, I'll randomly choose a question from one of these categories.
All right, let's go 4.
4. All right. So you chose the category of self. You know what? I think this is actually a really fitting question. What are some formidable moments that occurred for you this year?
This year?
Yes, some formidable moments.
Well, I'm a big fan of kind of pain and struggle. And I will get into that, I guess, today. That's the point of the episode. So I guess it was my second, or it was actually my first gym that I properly started closing down as a result of COVID-19, the pandemic. And it came completely out of the blue. We were due to take our members back in. Yep. I still haven't properly, publicly sort of come out with what happened. I may do at some point, but even though it was a pretty horrible time, I built that business up over 5 years. It was sort of my baby. It was my dream to open my own gym one day. And so, as a result of the pandemic, we got closed for reasons nothing to do with the business. The business was going great, but to do with the building itself. So I suppose that was a pivotal thing. Like for me, whenever something really a big struggle like that has come and hit me in my life, I've sort of followed the rule that you hear a lot in personal development these days, which is things happen for you, not to you. And I try and sort of clinch hold of that as much as I can. And I'm sort of enjoying the ride of what even the pandemic itself, when it hit, there was this part of me that was really enjoying how awful it was.
That's a funny way to put it.
In a sense of like, how are we going to survive this? This is going to be exciting. That was kind of because when you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, you haven't really got no other choice. I've got no B plan. I just I've got a family, I've got children, I've got mortgage, and so there was no plan B. There was no what can I do if this doesn't work out? Something had to work out, and I'm guessing we'll talk about some of that today. But that would be my big thing this year. It unfortunately isn't a positive thing to share.
Yeah, and I know the pain of having a business like shut down for reasons that you would not choose. That happened to me a few years ago, and it was I don't want to dive into the details of it and rob the story, but it was as a result of like a crooked business partner essentially that and so when a bailiff shows up and puts a lock on the door, it's hard to sort of process all of the emotions that you go through when it's like, I've invested years into trying to build this, and I've put a lot of my heart, and like I've been really passionate about this, passionate about the client base I built up, all this kind of stuff. Really, because I think those of us who go into as small businesses, we go into this with a passion for helping people and wanting to create a difference in the community. Because I think sometimes there's a misconception around business owners that business owners go into business just to make money, and I'm like, ha.
Definitely not in the fitness industry.
No kidding. We go into this because we're passionate about it, and we hope that we can make a living doing something we're deeply passionate about. And so, your business was forced to be closed down this year because not actually because of the pandemic, but because of something that was wrong with the building that your business was situated in.
Yeah, it was to do with the fact that we were leasing out in conjunction with a professional sport, and professional sport. Apparently, I'm still not sure if it's true or not, but apparently they have certain rules and regulations now whereby they couldn't share third parties with them. We had a bit of a crossover with the training, so and it just happened at a time when our lease had run out as well. So who knows?
Now, do you have a second gym, or was that like?
So I actually had 3 gyms. I closed one down the month before the pandemic started. More just because it made more sense, because I had 2 gyms in the same town, so it didn't make sense to have 2 gyms in the same town. I was just greedy. So the big upshot was, there was lots of, I don't know about you, but lots of business owners I talked to, the pros and cons of COVID. For me, it forced us on our other gym to go into the business model that I wanted to do, which was sort of semi-private / small group personal training rather than large group. I really, I'm a personal trainer, so I want to be able to offer the most premium service. I don't want to be a boot camp. Again, like you said, just because you can get more people and earn more money maybe per square foot. I want to enjoy my job more than anything else. And I want to help people get the best results. And I truly believe what we do right now is I truly believe it's second to none. It's fantastic what we do. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, no kidding. So do you ever have any moments like of, I'm not sure if regret would be the right word, or where you start, because now you have these responsibilities sitting on your shoulders. You said you've got a family, you've got kids, you've got a mortgage and all of this. And one of the ways of you building or creating your livelihood is taken away from you. Do you ever have moments where you wonder if it might be easier just to get a job?
No.
You're a true entrepreneur.
I think I do. My wife would agree. She says I'm completely unemployable. Would last an hour in a job. I've never been very compliant by following rules. I don't know. I just like variety as well, and I like, one of my core values is freedom. So freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of mobility wherever I am in the world. Freedom's one of the core values for me in my life, and how I make decisions in my life. And that would be chosen over other values like money, I guess, because it's kind of almost above that. But freedom is really important to me. So as an entrepreneur, that fits the bill.
Yeah, that's interesting that your wife says you're unemployable. I don't know if I would say I'm unemployable, but I'm close to it. If you look at the number of careers and jobs that I've had prior to doing what I do now as a nutrition and weight loss coach, I say I ran from this for many, many, many years until I couldn't run anymore when every other option was basically shut down. It was like, well, I should do that thing that I'm really passionate about, that I've been scared to step into and do. And I've never looked back since then. So, but this wasn't always your life. You not only were you a snooker player, Sorry, I say snooker because I'm
snooker,
snooker. Let's get it right.
Snooker, and then I moved to billiards, English billiards, when I was quite young, and I was very lucky because we had a world champion billiards player who was the manager of our club, and he basically took me on, coached me and told me when I first met him, you're going to be a champion. And so it's like, okay, well, and I was, and then I went on to become an English amateur champion, and then go around traveling around the world on the pro circuit. Unfortunately, billiards is not as well paid as snooker, so it was never something that I was. When I made the switch from snooker to billiards, it was a tough decision. Basically, what happened was it was when all the tobacco sponsorships pulled out of sport. I don't know if that happened in the US, but it was quite destructive to a lot of sports in the UK. And I'll never forget it because I'd spent this particular summer practicing 6 to 7 hours a day. I had my own table at home. I was really lucky. And it was at the back end of the summer when the tour was about to start and the news came that all of the sponsors were pulled out, all of the big sponsors, and there would basically be no tour unless you were on the main tour. And that was hard after putting all the graft in. So
right.
So I decided to go and win the English Amateur Billiards Championship instead. Because I was already winning. I'd already won junior championships when I was younger, and that's what I did. And then I sort of that was the snooker career over. The billiards career took over, and I liked billiards because I could play semi-professional. I could travel around the world, but I could still be a personal trainer and enjoy the freedom of earning quite good money, I suppose, for not doing that many hours,
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I really enjoyed. And then after becoming a PT, you soon realize after doing that for a few years that actually, if you're going to have any longevity in it, you kind of need to know a bit about business and entrepreneurship, because as a one-man band, there's only so long that really lasts for.
Right. Yeah.
And then obviously my big backstory is this came to a massive understanding and a halt when at age 27, I was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. And so,
right.
I'd spent about 6-7 years building my sort of one-to-one personal training business. I started to build a boot camp as well. I was working in schools. I was working in nursing homes. I was doing home one-to-one PT at people's houses. I brought one of those big vans where you go around and you have all the equipment in the van, and it's just a bloody nightmare because you've got to take it out every time.
Right. You got to work out just carrying equipment to and from people's places. And
yeah. I was doing really well. I was a young, fit guy. I could work long hours and doing great, But the wake-up call of obviously getting cancer was, as soon as I got the cancer, I was like, well, and also I just made the decision. I did have a part-time sort of fitness instructor job, which gave me a little bit of regular income. I quit that job to go full-time self-employed and sort of pursue my dream of having my own business. And then I got cancer after that. So that economically was a bit of a blow. But again, it's like one of these, I guess it was the first time in my life where properly I understood how useful trauma and sort of, hard times can be, because it showed me that actually I didn't have a business, really. It wasn't like a business. It was, I was on my own, self-employed, but is that really a business? It wasn't giving me the freedom that I really wanted. I thought I had the freedom, but actually I was stuck in I was having to be everywhere for everyone. And so being diagnosed with cancer and obviously not being able to work, it was pretty rough with the chemo. I did a little bit, but I just I could only do like a week or two until my next round.
Right. Yeah.
Again. So
then, well, let's say, so was there anything that like tipped you off? How did they discover this? Was there something that was like feeling not right with you, or just routine checkup, get blood work, and like, oh, your white blood cell count is up? Like what tipped them off?
I mean, I really did have. So what had happened? I had just. I mean, anyone listening, like if you have any of these sort of signs or symptoms, just don't second guess. Just go and get checked out. It's just I did have all the symptoms. So for a number of weeks before the diagnosis, I used to have a retreat that I had a contract at, and I would have to be there 2 or 3 days a week. And there was regular days or mornings that when it's only a 15-minute drive, I would drive and then I would get there. 5 minutes before there, I'd pull over and have a 5-minute nap. So I was so tired. I would put my alarm on for 5 minutes. I would give myself a 5-minute nap, and then I would drive to the retreat and go and do my sessions. I actually then went to Malta and I won the Malta Open, the Billiard Championship. Um,
Okay.
and previous to that, I'd just been traveling around Australia with my wife or my fiance at that time, and she kept bringing up the fact that I was having this kind of like she called it a tick. I kept having to clear my throat all the time, and so yeah, she kept picking up on that. And then, cut a long story short, after the Malta Open, or during the Malta Open, actually, I still remember the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and finals day. After each match, I was going back to my hotel room and getting like a half an hour power nap, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
I was constantly having to nap all the time, just tired. And then it all come to a sort of fruition when I got back from Malta. I had another billiard tournament the following week. I went to practice. I got down to my shot, and I couldn't get down to my shot. I had like it's almost like someone was pushing a sword into my chest. It was like an excruciating pain, and I just thought it was a bit strange. I thought maybe I got heartburn or something. So
Right. Yeah.
tried
Yeah.
again, and I couldn't. So I just practiced this other little thing you can do when you're standing up playing billiards called nursery cannons. And I didn't really think much about it. I went to the gym. I had a full day of personal training sessions. And as the day went on and on and on and on, it got worse. I got home that evening. I couldn't sit down to have dinner. And yeah, went to A&E and the rest. You know, that they obviously took me for the checkups. It took about 2 weeks to get the diagnosis.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was obviously really tough times. You know, we were
So
told that,
you're 27 at the time.
yeah.
Seem you're a PT, so in one sense you're living what would appear to be a fairly healthy lifestyle. The last thing you're thinking about is I might have cancer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. So that's why I guess, at the time I had a lot of PT clients that were wanting to do marathon running and 10Ks. So I was running like that's like 40, 50 miles a week or something, and then added to that, I'd be doing all the classes, like 'cause I used to do all of like the spinning and the body pump and all of those different classes.
Right. Right.
And then on top of that, I'd be doing my PT. So I just kind of thought, well, and I lost a lot of weight. I did lose a lot of weight. My wife just thought I was overdoing it with work, and I just thought the same. And I
Right. Yeah.
suppose that's the problem. If if you are quite a fit person, you kind of it can disguise problems like that, or diseases.
Right. Do you wonder if I mean, of course, we're sort of looking back retrospectively, and we say that hindsight is 2020. But do you ever wonder, like, looking back, if there was some contributing factors, like, because you were working so many long hours and so hard and putting so much physical demand on your body that might have potentially exacerbated this, or if there was like, could we say like biological stress that was occurring that made this more likely to happen? I mean, sometimes it's random, I guess. But do you ever look back and
Yeah,
say, I
I
wonder if there
think
were some things that I did that might have contributed to it?
yeah, my wife's actually a scientist, and so at the time she was working for I think AstraZeneca or one of the big companies, and one of the perks of being an employee, you could get like a full kind of blood analysis or like a full genome breakdown, and they can look at your past history, and they basically came back with very, very unlucky. That's what they put it down to. But
Wow.
yeah. I mean, I guess you never know with these things. Like the only one thing the big thing that I regretted that I did, I used to eat a lot of, because back then when I was in my early 20s, like most PTs in their mid 20s, I was doing a lot of weights and I was eating a lot of meat,
Yeah.
a lot of any meat, like I could just eat. Like I'm like 3 stone lighter than I was back then now because I just have changed the way that I live. But
So
yeah, it was a lot
for
of
those who
processed
are
meat as well, a
right,
lot of
yeah,
red meat, So I still eat meat, but I really limit. Like if I eat, I try and eat sort of farmers market quality, good meat, grass fed, and those are
right,
the
yeah.
sort of changes that I've made. Whether that had an effect or not, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, so, like you said, some of it is just bad luck, or like nobody sets out and says like I want to get cancer. And it's funny that you talk about this because I was just recently writing an article for my clients on nitrates, which what a thrilling topic in one sense. But there's, because, we hear about nitrates, say, in cured meats and processed meats that are problematic, but then you hear about like celery and beets and these vegetables that are also rich in nitrates, which are really good for your cardiovascular health. And I was trying to figure out like, what is the difference between the two? Because and there's like a tenuous connection, could we say, between that has been linked sort of between red meat and cancer. But I think it's the issue is not necessarily red meat per se, but the processing and curing that can take place, because these nitrates can form what's known as nitrosamines, and they can be carcinogenic. But when you eat when they're found in the vegetables and fruits, they are apparently, because of the vitamin C and other phytonutrients in the plant food, it prevents the conversion of nitrate to nitrosamine and actually helps it to go from nitrate to nitric oxide, which is beneficial for your heart health.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think the other thing, when I've looked at some of those studies, the issue is that a lot of those studies aren't accounting for the other things that people are eating when they're having some of those crappy meats,
right. Yeah.
You're eating fast food from your McDonald's or whatever, and how many people are having chips completely saturated in bad fats,
right. Yeah.
saturated fats. So yeah, I think a lot of those studies are kind of have been biased a little bit against red meat unfairly. But I think there's also, it's like a lot of these things in health, there's, it seems to swing one way or the other, but the in-between area is kind of overlooked.
Yeah, and I would say, with the red meat thing, that what we might observe is those that eat more red meat might tend towards a less healthy diet. So they might be ones that eat less vegetables and less plant food and so on and so forth, right? And so there are other factors to consider. And so, but my inclination, this is just my own thinking really, though, is there's a biological stress component to it as well. That for example, you were taxing your body very, very hard as well, relative to what the average person does. And so that could, in a sense, suppress your immunity a little bit, because again, I'm inclined to think that we probably develop cancer cells quite routinely, but normally our body would recognize it as a mutated cell and just take care of it. But like you said, you had a rare and aggressive form. Actually, what was this rare aggressive form of cancer that you were diagnosed with?
It was a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
Non-Hodgkin. So it does have a pretty good success rate for my age group at the time. I think it was like 85-90% success rate. I mean, you feel very grateful to live in a time when that treatment was available, because I think something like 30 years ago, I wouldn't be here now.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's one of those where I look at health as a whole, and I think that sometimes the medical world can get a bit of a bashing from the real holistic types. But then on the extreme, I think there's not enough focus on holistic health as well. Again, it comes back to having some common sense and looking at, well, let's look at the big picture. Yes, let's get healthy body, but if we're ever going to be in a position where you might have a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, do you want to not have the chemotherapy? Would I not have the chemotherapy again? Hell no. It saved my life.
Right.
Do I think that I could have survived holistically? Maybe, but am I willing to take the chance?
Right.
Steve Jobs did take the chance, and it didn't work out very well for him. So,
Yeah. Well, and he, I've always, I shouldn't say always, because I think I've swung just like a lot of people in my early 20s. I really went down the natural side of things, because I'd had some issues early on that doctors couldn't seem to answer. So it did show to me that there are some shortcomings to our medical model. And then I think, also I lived in the west coast of Canada, which tends to be a little more socialist and left-leaning in its political perspective. And so there's, and being at university, there's things that are influenced by that, where, at one point I was like, I wouldn't, feed McDonald's to my dog. And it's not like I can't think of the last time I've eaten McDonald's. It's been quite some time. But, I was really, really extreme down this rabbit hole, because I say we were like granola munching, tree hugging hippies kind of thing out on Vancouver Island on the west coast. But at the same time, you're right. There's a balance to be struck, because your life was saved by modern medicine, essentially. And there comes a point where the health issue that we're facing is more than our body can naturally overcome. And without medical intervention, that gives your body a boost, essentially fights part of the fight for you. You wouldn't be able to bounce back from that. So I think you and I are probably in agreement that like if we could really like obviously our medical model in one sense I feel like is broken because it's basically just dealing with sick people all the time and they're far down the spectrum and there's not really much of a focus on preventative health care that's left to like other
Yeah.
areas. But on the same token, we could talk about there's an element of personal responsibility that comes into play as well. But that being said, I don't want to get too sidetracked because I want to ask you what runs through your head when you're 27 years old and it comes back and says like you have cancer.
Mm. Well, you do think about the worst, obviously. You think, well, I mean, I still remember that day very, very vividly. And the first thing that always sticks into my head is when I come out of that meeting. It was a terrible day because, like a lot of hospitals, particularly now, I had to wait like 4 hours to get that news as well. So we were stuck in the waiting room. And, like, yeah, it was pretty harsh. But
Yeah.
coming out, I always remember just looking. It was actually quite a nice day. It was blue sky, and I was just really taking in the sort of the trees, the greenness of the trees, the blue sky, and I had the sort of, I guess, a moment where you just are fully aware of being alive
Yeah.
because I was just been faced with the possibility of not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and suddenly when you're pushed into the extreme, you look at the other extreme, right? And suddenly I'm just thinking, well, this and just so for the weeks afterwards, it was kind of like that, just really taking in life and trying to really appreciate stuff. And then really what happened for me was going down a bit of a rabbit hole with health because obviously I wasn't definitely wanting to do whatever I can. The way I saw it is I had, got a bad hand, use like the card analogy. I've been dealt a bad hand. And what can you do? Well, the best thing you can do is try and play your best game with what you've got, right? So I did get heavily into just really deep diving into nutrition, nutrition health, particularly in reference to cancer. Just learning more about antioxidants, learning more about cancer cells. A lot of stuff just blew my mind, quite honestly, and it kind of also showed me how far away we are from the going back to what we were just talking about, from the medical establishment to health, like holistic,
Right.
normal
Yeah.
health, how far away we were. I mean, for instance, in the waiting room to go and have your chemo, I'd have the ladies walking around with a plate of biscuits and Kit Kats and chocolate bars and cups of teas with sugar, and I'm like just learning about cancer and nutrition and how kind of like cancer feeds on sugar, and I'm like, I don't like, my mind's being blown. Why are you feeding people sugar when the very last thing they need is more sugar. um,
Right. Yeah.
it should all be around. And this, I guess, this brings up like the present day issue that I have. I was really hopeful that when COVID came along, this was going to be the defining moment where we were almost forced as a society into taking more personal responsibility for our health. And
Yeah.
it, unfortunately, to me, seems that it hasn't gone that way. It's going kind of slightly the other way. There's very little narrative around the personal responsibility and things that we can do, the real basic things that we can do to improve ourselves, and basically play our best hand. Because whether you forget about the vaccine being important or not, at the end of the day, we already know that if you play your best hand, if you're sleeping well, if you're drinking good quality water and good quality foods, and you're moving your body, and you're managing your stress levels, and you're keeping your weight at a reasonable, healthy weight, regardless of whether you get that virus or not, you're probably going to be okay.
Like you have, yeah, you have a better, you're just giving yourself the best shot at it.
Yeah,
Um,
and what else are you gonna do? Like, why not give your best? I don't. That's the thing I struggle with, is why wouldn't you want to give yourself the best shot?
yeah. So, you then you started like on a treatment regimen. So you're trying to, because I'm curious about what you did from a natural health perspective. Because I've read a couple of books and I'm trying to think of the names of them. One was this researcher who got brain cancer, and it was written probably 10 or 15 years ago. And I remember reading that, and it's still on my bookshelf. And so there's two books about two different authors who got cancer, and both of them, they really ramped up their consumption of plant foods in particular, and you think of things like broccoli, cauliflower, garlic, onions, stuff like that, and it kind of lists, there's actually this resource in the back of the book, which is probably still relevant to this day, but it lists all the different types of cancer and the different types of foods that have been shown to I guess, fight against cancerous cells. Did you kind of go down that route with regards to your own nutrition in this case?
Yeah. I mean, that's why when I said that I went deep dive, as a PT, I mean, John, are you a qualified PT as well? Is it just nutrition that you?
I've to be upfront, I've let my PT certification lapse. I haven't bothered to recertify for a number of years now.
But you will know then if you certified that the amount of education that a PT gets well, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, it's pretty poor. Like there's a couple of units on nutrition, but it's still based on the 80s or 90s food pyramid. It's pretty outdated. So yeah, for me, when I actually started to learn, just really, I guess for me, the biggest thing was I'd gone from using food and nutrition like most people, which is using it to serve my hunger rather than serve my survival, right?
Right.
Suddenly it was like, this is a means to survive and live longer life and protect myself. So that's a different mindset right away. And so yeah, I went on the rabbit hole, and obviously understanding just how bad processed foods and certain chemicals and additives really are. Particularly in the fight of something like cancer anyway. I mean, regularly, my meal of choice was literally a bowl of broccoli. And this was something that I would do after every single chemo. And the weirdest thing was I developed a craving for it. Like, I don't know if it's like a body telling your brain survival mechanism or what it was, but I've never it's crazy. Like how pregnant women have these cravings, these weird cravings.
Yeah.
For me, it was broccoli. It was like my body was telling my brain, "You need
get more of this stuff."
And I could just devour
like a head of broccoli.
Sometimes I'd have like some good quality fish with it, but I wouldn't have I cut all of the crappy processed foods out. I'd maybe have some yogurt in the morning, some eggs, or but I actually didn't eat a great deal. But yeah, it was really going quite sort of plant-based because I had this hunch that I felt like I'd maybe overindulged on red meat. I cut all red meat out.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was really the main changes in getting back to drinking. Like, I cut out alcohol, cut out caffeine. I mean, obviously at the time I was in my mid-20s, and we were traveling around Australia. So we were drinking, we were like eating barbecues in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife's an Aussie, so
yeah. So so it was quite transformational. I never really valued nutrition that much, but it had a really beneficial impact on me. I found it helped me recover from my chemos a lot quicker.
Yeah. So then, you go back to, I guess, your oncologist, and they come up, say, this is the treatment plan that we've sort of mapped out for you. We estimate you're going to require this many rounds of chemo or something like that. How many rounds of chemo did you end up doing?
Yeah, so I was told that I'd need to have 6 rounds. Was it 6 or 8? I think it was 8 rounds. Got a long time ago now. I think it was 8, and then 2 to 3 rounds of radiotherapy, and I was using aloe vera gel as well. I whatever you think about that stuff, like I was drinking a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
I was just taking all the vitamins, everything I could. Aloe vera gel's got something like 110 compounds in it, so it's got all the good stuff. It's disgusting to drink, but it was. But kind of again in a weird way.
You're throwing everything at it.
I suppose it's placebo effect. In a weird way, I was kind of like I said to you about the pandemic, I was kind of enjoying how disgusting it was. It's like, oh, this is progress. Like maybe it's
Yeah.
like Rocky drinking his raw eggs in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
let's have this, you know. But yeah, so doing all the things right, I think served me. What happened was after my sixth or eighth, I can't remember round, sat down with my oncologist, and he was like, "Wow, the cancer's gone." Like, um, and they oncologists very rarely will say you are cured because obviously they don't want you can have
Yeah.
recurrences, but he actually said you're cured. And he said you don't need any radio. And he said it's strange, but not only that, you haven't got any scar tissue at all either. He said, "What have you been doing?" And I was like, "Well, just living really healthy, like
Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculously healthy. You know, been
Yeah.
walking, getting fresh air, been managing my stress levels, been eating well." And so yeah, I guess I feel like that what you can never know, right? But I think
Yeah.
he was definitely very surprised that we didn't have to go through with the radio. He was
Now,
pleased because at that age, that oncologists are quite reluctant to put sort of anyone in their 20s into radiotherapy because obviously it can have sort of bad effects longer term.
right. Yeah. So, you get the diagnosis. You're cancer free. What then runs through your head? What do you know? And maybe I guess what I'm looking for. Well, actually, let's get a timeline here. So, how many years has it been since you got your cancer free
So
diagnosis?
last year was my sort of 10-year anniversary of being cancer free.
Okay, that's exciting. Is there ever like a part of the back of your mind that goes like this could come back?
Yeah, there was in the first, yeah, I mean, the first 3 to 5 years. Something like if it doesn't come back within 3 years, there's something like 70% chance it won't. If it doesn't come back after 5 years, it's like 99%.
Yeah,
So after 5 years, that was a big celebration time.
you felt like you're much more in the clear.
Yeah.
Um, from all the things that you're doing when you were fighting cancer, has there been some lapses, or have you maintained a lot of the healthy lifestyle changes you made?
Yeah, it was pretty transformative, to be honest. I mean, I've ever since I don't find eating healthy and living a healthy life difficult. I think so kind of ingrown in me. I guess I enjoy it more than anything.
Yeah,
I'd like a glass of wine, whatever, and a steak now and again. But again, if I have steak, it'd be from my local butchers. But yeah, I mean, it's all according. I think the thing is, it's like a lot of these things in health. What gets you to A doesn't mean that will get you to B. So for
right,
me, at the time, I was fighting cancer. So it's a bit like with COVID, right? You want to be in the best place you can be when you get that.
yeah,
But ultimately, where do I want to be at right now? I want to be in a place in my life. Is having a six pack or something like that important to me? No. Like I just would rather trade off the six pack for having a bottle of wine a week.
right, yeah,
That's so you got to be really clear on what's important to you, and I think that's why
yeah,
values is so important. It's one of the things that I talk about a lot with coaching is be
yeah.
really clear on what's important to you. You're always going to make trade-offs. And actually, it's funny. I've got a tab open here from Precision Nutrition. I don't know if you've read the blog, but it's called "The Cost of Getting Lean."
Yeah, I often share that one with my clients because I want them to understand. Because we idolized, like the six pack or the booty, or for females and things, and it actually doesn't, from an actual health standpoint. Like having visible ab definition is not necessarily a reflection of actually being healthy, because you have to push your body. For most people, they have to push the body to quite an extreme to achieve that.
Mm. Yeah, and I think health and happy. So we have this kind of, I call it the triple H life thing, LPT. So health, happiness, high performance. I feel like the three work together. And I've actually had a lot of coaches in the past, like that worked for LPT, who are cover models or bodybuilders or champion bodybuilders, and
Yeah,
these guys are not happy. They look amazing,
yeah,
but
no,
having
it's
to starve
misery.
yourself and do all these crazy dieting methods to get down to the levels that they get to. Even I've worked with some Olympic athletes in sport who have, you look at what they have to do, they look phenomenal, but are they happy? Well, they maybe are happy when they win the Olympic medal, but um, it's really getting clear on those three things. Where's my health in comparison to my happiness, in
Yeah.
comparison to my performance in my life? And it's a constant sort of, and that will change as you go through your life, right? Because when you're young, it's more about, you're going out, you're maybe single. It's more about the aesthetics. That's what makes you
Yeah.
happy. For me now, what makes me happy is having enough energy to keep up with my kids.
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. I've got an 8.5 month old, and I just watch how his limbs go, and I go, that's my preview. Like that's what's waiting
Yeah,
for me. And
yeah,
so that's my reason for wanting to be in good physical condition, is because I want to be able to keep up with him. I've been, you know my story. I've been obese, and so I'm not going to look like a cover model because I have loose skin. Like it's just you know, but so now, like you talk about self-awareness and self-mastery, I think a lifestyle performance. So your company is Lifestyle Performance Transformations,
yeah.
and you're about helping. So really, your experience of fighting cancer has really massively influenced how you work with other people.
Completely, completely. I was very much your typical PT, and that's why about 2 years after, I went through a stage of about 2 or 3 years after my diagnosis where I was quite unhappy as a personal trainer. I felt like I'd lost my identity. I didn't really know. PT didn't mean anything to me anymore because think about it. I'd just gone from being one of the fittest people everyone knew, and people would say funny jokes sometimes, like, "Well, they'll make jokes about, oh, well, I told you all of that exercise isn't healthy for you and stuff like that." I mean, it's like, oh,
Wow.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and it kind
Yeah.
of things like that really do hit a chord. You're like, well, seriously, but
Like,
it kind
yeah,
of
no kidding.
it did make me think a lot about how I approached helping people going forward. And it made me realize that that training side, that exercise thing that those personal trainers do, that which was myself, that's like probably one of the smallest pieces of the puzzle to this big thing, which I now call mastering you, which is essentially achieved by lifestyle performance. Had this sort of
Yeah.
concept in my head of why do people have to perform well just in work or in career? Why can't they perform well in life?
Yeah.
And how can we measure that? Well, we can measure that by how we're performing as parents in our relationships. We can measure that in our work. We can measure that financially. We can measure that by our health metrics,
Yeah.
our sleep. There's so many factors that kind of succumb in terms of mastering you, and that led me down the road to mindset and personal development, and that's been something I don't think I'll ever give up. Really, that's my real passion.
Yeah, I agree because I'm working on a project around deep health, like and really that comes into the work that I do with Freedom Nutrition Coaching. I often joke that nutrition is the cover story or weight loss is the cover story because the work that we're really doing here is the inner work, right? And it's like the carrying around the excess weight is very much a symptom, or the disordered eating behaviors are really a symptom of something deeper going on. But I say we meet people where they're at, and very often the first thing they look at is, well, I'm unhappy because I'm overweight, and so I want to lose the weight. So I'm like, cool, I'll help you lose the weight. And then as we start working together, we realize, okay, no, actually, you're unhappy because of a lot of other things, and the byproduct of that unhappiness is actually carrying on excess weight because of the role that food, for example, plays in your life.
Yeah, yeah. The problem is almost never the problem.
Yeah,
The problem is
yeah,
always like 10 layers deeper than the actual problem. The problem is actually a good excuse for the real problem.
yeah, yeah. And so when you're working with people, how do you track these metrics? So you say like the exercise as a small piece of the puzzle, because I think you and I are familiar with the term deep health, and there's different aspects to it. Like we look at mental and emotional health, social and relational health, even really environmental health, the quality of food that we consume, as well as like physical health is just one part of it, really.
Yeah, yeah. We use multiple metrics. So we do use lots of questionnaires with our clients
Hmm.
because they can be fairly autonomous with their. We use a lot of like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 ratings. So how how's your stress levels 1 to 10, how are your relationships, how's your mood 1 to 10. We also do have an app that only our members get access to, which they can share their feelings with us very simply through the app. We track their nutrition through the app. We can track their training through the app, how much weight they're lifting, their step count. And obviously we can track their body changes and their body transformation through the app as well. But ultimately, at LPT, we do a lot of workshops and a lot of sort of general sort of one-to-one coaching and support as well. So, it's never perfect. It's something that I'm always trying to work on and improve on. And I've changed what we do, God knows how many times over the last 6-7 years. And, you've got to be willing to fail and try things to find out what really can be impactful. But I have to say, it's hard. It really is. Because people are so complex. Health is so complex. What works for one person is the opposite to what will work for another person. It's and that's another thing why I enjoy it so much, because I enjoy the challenge. It's like, how
people
do
are
I
a puzzle.
master this thing? This is so difficult, and that's why I'm so addicted to it.
Yeah, I think Lifestyle 180 originally used to be a program called 80 Days to Awesome. And I took a lot of the feedback from my clients. The one thing is, I think everybody that works with us, they know that we sincerely want to see them be able to create these amazing transformations in their life. It's going to be an imperfect way that we do this, but I every 4 weeks I get my clients to give me feedback. I'm like, give me feedback as a coach, give me feedback on the program, tell me what's working, tell me what's not, because I want to keep making this program better and better. Just in the same way that we're trying to make our health better and better. And so I think when our clients know that this is our intention, is that we really want to serve them to the best of our abilities to help them do this, they're excited to kind of be a part of that process.
Yeah, I like that. I should do more of that as well. Like, making sure that people feel like they're on board. I like that approach. I mean, one of the things that we've done that I've really gone full circle on is I've gone all the way back to really nailing the core foundations. Like, we went on a tangent where we, as you do when you're a nutrition coach or a lifestyle coach, you learn these new things, you try out, whether it's keto or intermittent fasting or all these different things. And then I just, you end up, for me, back to are you doing the basics?
The simple,
the real, because it's so tempting to try this new thing or this new thing. But if those big blocks aren't in place on those foundations, it's just going to fall over in the end. It's and it's the same for anything in life, isn't it? Those foundations.
Absolutely. Well, and this is what I say to my clients. I say, look, I'm going to make you an active participant. It's not I'm going to give you rules, but together we're going to collaborate. I'm going to make you an active participant in reverse engineering or building out your healthy lifestyle. We know the fundamental principles of a healthy lifestyle, quality sleep, stress management, quality nutrition, regular movement, and then healthy relationships. But we start with that principle and go, how do we shape that principle to suit you and your unique circumstances and situation and so on? And so ultimately, my clients get to play an active role in shaping this. And I think that's really important to empower them in this regard too, because you can't really create a transformation. If someone says to me, I'm going to hand you all my problems, you solve them and then give them back, there's no growth that's taken place. And so I think it's really, really important to make us active participants in our own transformation.
Yeah, 100%. And it's got to be purposeful. That's the key for me. I call it purposeful transformation. Like, what is the purpose? If someone says, I want to run a 10K, why? What's the point of that? They want to lose 2 stone, why? What's the purpose? What is it? That's not the outcome. That's just a vehicle towards a bigger purpose. Is that 2 stone going to help you keep up with your kids? Is it going to make you feel more like a role model to your kids? What's the purpose? How's it going to make you feel? That's so key for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I appreciate you making time for me today, because I know you got a lot of things on your plate and you've shared some really incredible insights, and I appreciate you also being willing to share your story as well. I think I want to show people sort of the gritty details of people's stories, but also to give them hope, that, hey, you know what, you might be faced with these really difficult things, but it's not the end of the road. In fact, it could be the very thing that really transforms you as a human being. And so really to kind of send us off, if you were to kind of wrap up some wisdom here in a nutshell, what would you like to share with people as a closing remark?
I guess I would say your dream or sort of ideal health, or your dream or body or your ideal measure of health can only really sustain itself by building your dream life.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everybody for tuning in, and hopefully you're taking some real value from this, and let's have an amazing week ahead.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become, and I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.